Hi everyone, Christian B., Burnaby, Vancouver-based real estate agent. Welcome to Rapid Fire Real Estate, where today we'll run through 5 topics. We'll spend a few minutes on each, and you can take that intel with you out into the marketplace. And if you need more help, you can find my contact in the show notes. And it's just right there, easy peasy. Now, and at the very least, give us a subscribe, and thank you to all our new subscribers. The jump here has been quite extraordinary since Canada Day, so I appreciate you being here. Okay, for today, I want to run through 5 topics. I want to give you the agenda. First is we're going to talk about the sales increases month over month. We saw a jump of 32%. What's behind those numbers? 2, we're going to talk about the 2 indicators you should be looking at to give you an indication of where prices are trending, whether up, sideways, or down. 3rd, I want to talk about raising rent on your tenants if you are a landlord out there, and what you want to do before you do that in the next 6 to 12 months. 4th, I want to talk about price per floor. If you're buying a home for a view, what should you think about? An interesting thing I discovered here this last weekend I want to share with you. And 5th is the buying versus rental discussion. You know, I see a lot of calculators online, and I've had this discussion with people, even in my run club. And I think there's a lot of assumptions here that are baked into this, I just want to pull on the thread of some of those sort of those blind spots you may have, both on the rental and the buying side, just so you're aware that you factor those into your numbers if you are buying or not, and how much that will cost you, potentially. Okay, let's jump into it. First topic, sales jumped significantly here month over month in September 2024 to October 2024, increase of 32%. And I've been hearing this as well, talking to my colleagues. I've been seeing a little bit more of this now on my own listings. Now, what I want to share with you is, because we get a lot of sales data. There's oceans of it online. I subscribe to private newsletters, but I want to share with you my big 5, my 5 that I pulled out of this the sales data that we got. First is the increase in sales in condos and townhouses in downtown Vancouver, and I'm talking about West End all the way to False Creek. The increases there we went from 106 sales in September to 154 in October. So that's a 45% increase. Significant. And that is same thing for the west side of Vancouver. That's Main Street, everything over to UBC, where we saw 130 homes sell in September, and that jumped to 230 in October. So that's an increase of 77%. That's huge. If we see increases, if we continue to see those types of sales numbers, and those are yearly highs, I have to add, expect prices to trend higher as we go through March, April, and May next year. And I know there's some buyers out there that are trying to jump the gun here and get ahead of the wave in my discussions with you at recent open houses. Some other noticeable examples here. New West, small municipality, only 7 buyers for detached homes. In September, that jumped to 21, an increase of 177% month over month. And a few other detached locales. Richmond's saw an almost 100% increase, going from 49 sales to 93 in October. And we had Burnaby jumping 57%, going from 42 to 66 homes being purchased in October of 2024. So look, and again, across the board, it was 32%. So if that trend continues, prices will definitely go up because the inventory will get eaten up and there won't be enough out there. So, and that's mainly why. Now, this brings me to my second topic, and this is the 2 sort of gauges on your dashboard that you want to follow if you are looking to sell and buy more space for potentially your growing family, and or you're just renting and thinking about buying. One is, what are the watch the interest rates coming down, because if the interest rates come down and they get to a point where they are level with what you'd pay for rent, well, obviously, most renters who have the means, the income and the down payment are going to jump right into the home buyer pool, because at that point, it makes no sense to rent, right? I'll give you an example. I've got a listing in West Coquitlam that I'm carrying, and with the decrease in the interest rates from the Bank of Canada, it would now cost just a little over $3,000 a month in a mortgage cost, whereas renting it would cost about $2,800 to $2,900 a month. That's almost even, isn't it? Now, of course, there's still strata fees and insurance on top of that. I understand that. But for most buyers, they're going to, the quick litmus test is going to be here. What am I paying in a monthly mortgage? What am I paying in rent? And that brings me to the second part of the second indicator you want to watch for is, where do rents go? Rents have come down in the last 12 months by about 5-6%. But, if rents will rise over time because we have population growth, and if rents are rising and interest rates are coming down, all of a sudden you get a situation where the mortgage and the rent are the same. That's when you see the stampede come into the real estate market. And it's a tough market to buy in. So if you're thinking about it, you might just do your own calculations ahead of time. And of course, feel free to reach out to us below. We're happy to help in any way we can. Okay. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is for you landlords. You own a place, you've got a good tenant. Should you raise the rent? I'm not so sure you should do that right now. I understand interest, the mortgage payments and property taxes are higher than before, but because rents have come down, if you raise the rent on your tenants right now, they might start looking around and shopping for another place on Craigslist. And that means you may have to find a replacement tenant. And if you can't score more in rent, it makes no sense to raise it on them, of course, especially if you're happy with the tenants that you have. So you might want to save yourself that time and hassle. The easiest thing to do, jump on the Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and Zumper.com, ZUMPER.com. It's a great site. It really gives you the rental rates per municipality. I find them to be extremely accurate, surprisingly. I haven't found a website as good as theirs. So check theirs out. And if you find that you're in your location, where, let's say you've got a place in Commercial Drive and the rents have come off, you may just want to keep the tenant that you have. Okay. And okay, I want to move along to, by the way, just on that point, the rental increase amount allowable is 3%. And if you're raising it by 3% and your rent is still a lot lower than the market, which is up here, then, by all means, it makes sense to raise it, of course. Okay. Number 4 I want to talk about here is, what's the cost of a view? I have a listing in New West right now, beautiful modern towers right there on the Fraser River. And, these are forever views. You can't score a better view than this. And the interesting thing is, the higher you go up in the tower, the less water view you get, especially if you're standing back and you're further in the apartment by the kitchen behind the counter. And, generally speaking, we'll say it's every $3,000 to $5,000 per floor that you go up in a tower, as a rule of thumb. But if you get up to the 47th floor, and at this point, you're looking out from your kitchen and all you see is an industrial site, a sand dune on the other side in Surrey, probably not worth paying $100,000 for, right? So in this instance, actually, if you're down on the 15th floor or even the 7th floor, you're getting full water view from the inside of your condo out over the counter and looking out over into the your living room. So something to keep in mind. Sometimes paying for a lot of money for a view is not what it's cut out to be. So look for that. Okay. Okay, fifth and finally, buying versus renting. I've had a few discussions with folks about this recently, and there's also a lot of calculators online that try to help you break this down and then sort of map it out over a 10 to 15 year time span so that you can see, which one makes more financial sense for you. My basic rule of thumb is if you're going to be living here, Vancouver, Burnaby, for the next 5 years, you should be buying. 5 years or more, you should really own your own property because you're buying again with leverage, sometimes with as little as 5 or 10% down, but you give yourself all the upside, right? So if a $600,000 condo jumps to $660,000, you are gaining that entire $60K worth of equity, right? And so that's the power of owning real estate. I remember reading that about 95% of millionaires here in the greater Vancouver area have all gotten here through home ownership. Right? It's the example I often give is Christy, kindergarten teacher, and her husband, Peter Plummer, bought a place in 1991 for $210,000, and today it's worth $2 million. It's not that they were running $1 million businesses, it's that they owned real estate for the long run, right? They paid off their mortgage, the value went up, and the rest is history. Now, a couple of assumptions, blind spots that I see in people's approaches to this and that are not addressed in these online calculators. If you are renting, first thing you must factor in rental increases. And we don't know what those are. They tend to be 2 to 3% per year. Depends, if there's a new provincial government, let's say 4 or 5 years from now, they may go back to the old allowable increase, which was 2% plus inflation. Imagine, paying an increase of 5 or 6%. It's hard to factor those all in, but you've got to be aware that they're there. Getting evicted. I often see where there's a strong imbalance where someone's paying $1,600 a month in rent and market rate is $2,600. Don't be surprised if the landlord's, you get a knock on the door or a phone call from the landlord and he says, hey, my son's moving in for a year. If they're moving in for a year or more, it's fair game. And I mean, I wouldn't want to subsidize a rental by $1,000 a month. And if you're no homeowner does. And so you got to be aware of these kinds of things. You can get evicted, and that is a legal eviction, by the way. If a family member, parents, or kids move in for a year or more, that's fair game. And then you're going back into the rental market and you're paying whatever the market rate is at that time. There's no calculators online I see that address this. You'd have to really create your own spreadsheet and play with this. And the other thing is the tax efficiency. So if you're putting a lot of your savings into RSPs and TFSAs, that's great. If you're putting them into registered accounts, non-registered accounts, like they might call them at a Quest Trade, of course, if you're selling your gains, you're going to be paying taxes on those. And so you would need to and want to factor that in. On the buying side, some assumptions. As of the fall of 2024, interest rates are hovering in the roughly the 4% range for a 2-3 year fixed. 2-3 years from now, that might be a little bit less. It might be 3.5%. So if your mortgage is coming up for renewal in 2 or 3 years, you might be paying a lot less in your mortgage, or maybe $200 or $300 less. A few other things that most, I throw out sort of 4% as a stable growth predictor for residential real estate in the greater Vancouver area. Rule of thumb is that you will see the market jump once every 5 to 8 years. We've had periods where the market's been flat for 8 years. Check out the early 2000s. And then all of a sudden, once we hosted the Olympics and thereafter, boom, we saw a huge increase in prices to the point where they've almost doubled since the Olympics for condos and attached properties. The other thing is when you're in the real estate market, you always give yourself a real estate lottery ticket, as I call it, because there's always a chance that you get a strata windup on your property, especially if you've bought in a place like the West End. It's a really old building. It's 1972. It's a baby strata with 25 owners. They may not want to replace the parquet membrane for $500,000. They may not want to then replace the roof and do new windows. And they might just say, you know what? We know land values have risen really high. Why don't we sell for double the value of our units, which would be called to a developer, and that's called a strata windup. I'm not going to talk too much about that in this video, but a strata windup in essence is kind of like a land assembly in the residential side, where a whole block of homes goes up for sale. A developer comes in, knocks them down, and then builds townhouses, for example. It's the same idea with a stratified property. Okay, I think we've touched on all the things that I wanted to address. Hope you found this helpful, insightful, fun, and interesting. Again, thanks to all the new subscribers. It's been quite a jump there in the last 3 months. And give us a like, and if you enjoy it, we'd love to see you back here next week. Have a great week.